Hello, I'm Tom. I'm a 65-year-old runner who is self-coached. Today's video is going to be about how to self-coach, especially if you're somebody that's 60 years old or older. And I will talk about the pros and cons of self-coaching for a little bit, but primarily this video is going to be about how to actually self-coach. What are some of the pitfalls and what are some of the things you should do if you decide to coach yourself in your running journey? If you find this video helpful, please give it a like and also subscribe to my channel. Thanks. I'll briefly talk about whether or not you should coach yourself or whether you should hire a coach. First of all, if you are on a very limited income, then it's probably not a good investment to actually pay a monthly fee or an annual fee or whatever to hire a coach. And it's probably not a good idea to go for the coach who charges the least, because he probably is not all that great of a coach. So if you're going to hire a coach, it should be a good coach. And good coaches will cost you extra money. Certainly a good coach will give you good workouts, know when to time them for your races, and help you to be a faster runner. But for those of us that are 60 and older, the type of coach we need is somebody that will hold us back and help us to do those things that will prevent injury in our running. One reason to hire a coach is if you're the type of runner who really doesn't like to do the X's and O's, doesn't like to do their research, is bored with training plans and that kind of a thing, then maybe hiring a coach is what you need to do. On the other side of the coin is if you are a bit of a nerd and do like to do your homework and study up on training and read lots of books, then maybe self-coaching is for you. I personally enjoy studying training, runner's training. That's one reason that I like to self-coach. If you're patient and are willing to hold yourself back, something that is challenging for me, then self-coaching might be a good option for you. When I say hold yourself back, again, I'm back to referring to injuries again. Oftentimes we get injured because we're pushing ourselves too hard when we should be holding back. Maybe we need to be cutting a particular run or a workout short. If we feel that little niggle, then if you're good at holding yourself back, then maybe self-coaching is for you. If you're not very good at holding yourself back, then maybe you need to be under the guidance of a coach, an outsider, who can tell you to hold back. And then there's you also need to do what your coach says. So if you're a bit of a rebel and not willing to do what your coach says, then why get a coach in the first place? Okay, I'm going to veer away from whether or not you should coach yourself or hire a coach. The rest of this video is going to be about how to coach yourself in running. At the beginning of this video, I had a quote by Brad Hudson, which talked about writing your training plan in pencil rather than in ink. Brad Hudson is very much into a philosophy of adaptive running. And that means a lot of things, but one thing that it means is being flexible, being willing to change your training plan and on even a minute-to-minute basis, day-by-day basis, not being hardcore about writing it in ink and sticking to every workout precisely. If you're very rigid about your training plan, then that's a sure recipe for injury. So be willing to adapt. It is a good idea when you're self-coached to write out a tentative training plan. Training plans are good, again, if you write it out in pencil, willing to erase it on the fly. I have just about given up on even writing out training plans more than a month in advance. Uh, uh, I've mentioned before that I'm an injury-prone runner, and I tell you, if I rigidly stuck to some kind of a training plan month by month, I'd be in the hospital, quite frankly. So it's important to be very flexible, to be willing to adapt, and to change your training plan on the go. Now, it's okay to have goals, even though I have just about given up on uh, pointing to a specific race, let's say 2 or 3 months in advance, and saying, okay, that's the big race that I'm going to point for. Too many things can happen that will keep that from being the big race that you're pointing for, that you want to peak for. Too many things will happen that will prevent you from reaching a peak. And this is especially applies to older runners. Of course, your top elite runners definitely don't go by that plan. They have national championships, and if they're really world class, then they're going to have the world championships to peak for, and those championships are set in stone. They are on the calendar, and so you can't really vary from that. And also, even if you're not a world class runner, if you're a high level runner on the national level, you pretty much have to stick to seasons and the big races that will happen. Not so, I think, with runners that are in their 60s or older. I think we have to take it month by month and not worry so much about peaks. We have to be willing to adapt. That's the big word, adaptive running. Read Brad Hudson's book. I think it's a good idea to look yourself in the mirror and say, I am my own coach. This might create a little bit of accountability, might put on a little bit of pressure, and get you going in the right direction of actually coaching yourself properly. Look at yourself as a coach, as your own coach, and be accountable. If all you're being accountable to is yourself, well, hey, uh, accountability is a good thing. I think a little bit of humility goes a long way if you're going to self-coach. Being self-coached may come with the label of being a bit of a rebel. Well, I think you need to throw your rebellion out the window if you're going to coach yourself, and be willing uh, to get the advice of outsiders and to take the advice of outsiders. Don't be afraid to walk up to a coach and ask for a little bit of free advice from them. And also just read lots of books. Be willing to apply training tips that you find out of books, but also people, actual real people, such as a good physical therapist. If we need any kind of outside coaching, I think it should come from a good physical therapist. And I'm talking about those of us that are 60 years of age or older who are injury prone. Our coach should be our physical therapist. That's where I've got most of my training tips in the last couple of years. It's from physical therapists. Physical therapists aren't perfect. They're not necessarily expert runners, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But in general, it's going to be good advice that they give you. I know it's a cliche, but the old saying for runners that says, listen to your body. Well, that is so true, and it's especially true if you're a self-coached runner, 60 years old or older. If there's any aches and pains, any niggles when you run, just be discerning, be good at making a judgment call about whether this niggle is something you can run through or whether it's something you need to take a day or two off from your training plan. I haven't talked much about actual running, about how a self-coached runner can improve their running so that they can run faster in races, just perform better in competition, that kind of thing. I haven't mentioned that too much because as a runner over 60, I found that 95% of the battle is just staying injury free. And so that's been my focus. However, there are things that you can do if you're smart, some things that you can do to actually help yourself to run faster. Some of my previous videos touch on things like 80-20 training. Make sure you're doing 80% of your runs at a slow aerobic pace, and then you can perhaps run 20% of your runs at a threshold or anaerobic pace. So there's that bit of running advice there. There's also the philosophy of being gradual in your training, and that, especially if you're coming back from an injury, I mentioned that before, just there's a 10% rule, which I must confess I haven't followed that. I tend to increase my mileage a little bit faster than 10% until I've reached goal mileage. There's things you can do. You know, the previous video I mentioned how you can combine longevity with running faster, and there's some specific tips there on what you can do. But you know, half the battle is just, not half the battle, 95% of the battle is just preventing injury. And if you can do that, hey, you're probably going to run at a pretty good pace in your races. Okay, my fellow self-coached runners, 60 years old or older, get out that pencil and make sure you have an eraser handy so you can write out that tentative training plan and be willing to adapt. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and also subscribe to my channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you in a week.